everyone, welcome to TriRide. This is Pack 365, myself Srija. So today in this session you're going to learn about female urethra and also physiology of urinary system. So female urethra. So what is the female urethra? It is a short tube which is about 4 centimeter long. So its one and only function is to carry urine from the bladder to outside the body. So unlike males, it does not carry the reproductive fluids. So where is it located? So it starts from the bladder neck to the bottom of the bladder. It runs forward through the tissue and it is embedded in the front wall of the vagina. So the opening of the urethra is called as the external urethral orifice. So this opening is located between the clitoris and the vaginal opening. So what are the sphincters? Nothing but the valves present in the female urethra. So sphincters or valves, these are the circular muscles that act like gates to control the urine wall, urine flow. So what is the first sphincter? It's internal urethral sphincter. So this is made up of smooth muscle, means you can't control it consciously. It's an involuntary muscle. So it is located in the bladder neck. It works involuntarily, which is the automatic control by the nervous system. So it keeps urine inside the bladder until it's time to urinate. So this is about the internal urethral sphincter. And coming to external urethral sphincter. So this is made up of skeletal muscle which you can control it consciously. Means it is made up of a voluntary muscles. So these are part of the pelvic floor muscles. They also helps to hold in the urine, especially when coughing, laughing or exercising. So why is the female urethra important? It helps to keep the urine stored and released at the right time. So because of this, female urethra is short. So women are more likely to get urinary tract infections since bacteria can travel more easily to this bladder. So what are the muscles that form the external urethral sphincter? So the external urethral sphincter, it is formed by three main muscle groups. So what are those? The sphincter urethra, compressor urethra and urethra vaginal sphincter. So sphincter urethra, this is the main circular muscle around the urethra. So compressor urethra, the sphincter urethra, it also helps to tighten the urethra to stop the urine. Whereas compressor urethra, a muscle that squeezes the urethra from both sides like a clamp. So what does it do? It helps when holding the urine during coughing or laughing. And the third type of sphincter is uretrovaginal sphincter. So this surrounds both the urethra and vagina. It provides the extra support, especially after the childbirth. So together they allow the voluntary control of urination. So what is the epithelial lining of the female urethra? The inner surface of the urethra, it is made up of different types of cells in different regions. So this is because the urethra must handle stretching and as well as the protection. So part of the urethra, the proximal part which is located near the bladder, it is made up of the transitional epithelium. So which is same as bladder lining and stretchy like elastic. Whereas the middle part, it is made up of pseudostratified or stratified columnar epithelium. So this is a multiple layer look which has a strong support. And the distal part is, it is located near the opening which is made up of stratified squamous epithelium. So this is tough like skin and it protects against the friction and infection. So why different linings? So why these parts of the urethra have different linings? Because to stretch whenever the urine flows through the bladder or urethra. So to protect against the infection and also about the irritation, to handle the mechanical stress. So now how the blood supply is done to urethra. So in males, through prostatic urethra, the main arteries supplying the blood are inferior vesical artery and middle rectal artery. Whereas in females, the blood supply mainly comes from the internal pudendal artery, vaginal artery and inferior vesical artery. So good blood supply helps to heal and maintain the continence, nothing but a urine control. So damage can lead to the incontinence. So here is a cross-section diagram. So here you can see this lumen, which is a space where urine flows, and epithelium, it's a line surface type changes along the tube, and next to epithelium there is submucosal layer, This is a layer with blood vessels as well as glands. And next to submucosa, it's a inner longitudinal muscle which is circular and longitudinal and also called as a smooth muscle, which helps to push the urine out. And straightened muscle, which is a voluntary control muscle, also called as the external sphincter. And serosa over here, it is a outer protecting cover. So lumen, two layers of lining, two muscles, and to the outer protection. So this is the diagram of the urethra. So next, how the venous drainage is done within the urethra. So how blood leaves the urethra. So the veins around the urethra, they collect the blood and drain it back towards the heart. So in males, an important group is the prostatic venous plexus. So in females, the drainage mainly goes to vesical venous plexus, around the bladder, and also about the vaginal venous plexus. So both males and females also drain through the internal pudendal veins. So what is the clinical importance? This prostatic venous plexus, it is connected to the spine veins through which cancer can spread, which has a metastasis route. And also this venous plexus, they can merge and cause the bleeding in pelvic surgeries. So this is how the venous drainage is done. And how does the nerve supply? So urethra has two types of nerve control, both autonomic nervous system and also about the somatic nervous system. So autonomic nervous system, it is an involuntary control, and the sympathetic nerves T11 to L2, this closes the internal urethral sphincter. So what is the role of the sympathetic nerves? They hold the urine or they prevent the leakage. So they are activated in both fight or flight response. Whereas parasympathetic nerves S2 to S4, they relax the sphincter and contract the detrusor muscle, which is located at the bladder wall. So what is the main role of this parasympathetic nerve? It helps the bladder empty during the urination. So then is somatic nervous system, which has a voluntary control. So pudendal nerve S2 to S4. So this controls the external urethral sphincter. So we can choose when to urinate by tightening or relaxing these muscles. So this is how the nerve supply is done. So next is lymphatic drainage. So lymph system, it removes waste fluid and also fights the infection. So lymph from the urethra, it drains into the pelvic lymph nodes, sacral lymph nodes, and in females only, it also drains into the paraurethral nodes. So why is this important? Because it helps to understand the cancer spreading, infections, and also swelling. So doctors check these nodes during the cancer diagnosis. So this is about the female urethra. So next is physiology of the urinary system. So we are going to learn about the functions, the detailed functions of the urinary system and its parts. So functions of urinary system, the main function about is the kidneys. So excretion of metabolic waste. So kidneys, it removes the waste products that the body cannot keep. Examples of waste removed is urea from protein breakdown, uric acid from nucleic acids like DNA or RNA, creatinine from muscles, and toxins and drugs. So you have to think the kidneys like a water filter that removes the dirty substances from the blood. So the second function is regulation of water balance. So kidneys control how much water is kept or removed in the urine. So if dehydrated, so kidneys save water, urine becomes concentrated and dark yellow. If overhydrated, kidneys accept more water, urine becomes dilute and clear. So the third function is electrolyte regulation. So they control the levels of important ions in the blood. So sodium ion. What is the purpose of sodium ion? It helps in the blood pressure and fluid balance. And potassium ion, heart and muscle function. And calcium ion responsible for bones and nerve signaling. So chloride and bicarbonate ions, they are responsible for acid-base balance. So fourth function is acid-base balance. So kidneys remove excess acid, that is H plus ions, and reabsorb bicarbonate ions to prevent the blood from becoming too acidic or alkaline. So works with lungs to maintain the normal pH. So next function is blood pressure regulation. So through the renin, angiotensin, aldosterone system, nothing but RAAS system. So kidneys releases renin when blood pressure is low. So renin causes blood vessels to tighten and also the kidneys to retain the salt. through which the blood pressure increases. So kidneys are the major controls of the blood pressure. So next function is hormone secretion. So kidneys make important hormones like erythropoietin, renin and calcitriol. So what is the function of erythropoietin? It tells the bone marrow to make the red blood cells. So renin, what is the function of renin? It controls the blood pressure. And calcitriol, which is also called as active vitamin D, it helps to absorb the calcium from food to make the strong bones. And then detoxification of drugs and chemicals. So kidneys, they remove poisons, drugs, alcohol and chemicals, similar to a body cleaning system. Gluconeogenesis. So what do you mean by gluconeogenesis? During starvation or fasting, kidneys helps to make the glucose from fats and proteins. So this supports the energy supply when the food is not available. So this is called as the gluconeogenesis. So next is the physiology of the kidneys. So the kidney perform three major processes: filtration, reabsorption and secretion. So this slide focuses on the filtration. So the first is glomerular filtration. So where does this happen? So it happens in the renal corpuscle, which consists of glomerulus, which is a network of tiny blood capillaries, and as well as Bowman's capsule. This is the cup-shaped structure that collects the filtrate. So what is filtration first? Filtration, it is the movement of water and small substances from the blood into the Bowman space. So it occurs when the blood is pushed under the pressure through the glomerular capillaries. So what gets filtered? Water, glucose, amino acids, ions like sodium, potassium, calcium, chloride and also the bicarbonate, urea, creatinine and toxins. So what does not get filtered? Blood cells does not get filtered and large proteins also. So because they are too big to pass through the filtration membrane. So this is how the filtration takes place. So next is the glomerular filtration rate. So what is GFR? So GFR, it is the amount of filtrate formed per minute. So normal value is 125 milliliter per minute. So about 180 liters per day. So why is this glomerular filtration important? Because it indicates how well the kidneys are working. So if there is a low GFR, it shows the kidney disease, dehydration and shock. So if it is a high GFR, it results in the excess loss of fluids and solutes. So what controls this GFR? What are the three main pressures? Glomerular hydrostatic pressure, blood colloid osmotic pressure and capsular hydrostatic pressure. So glomerular hydrostatic pressure, what is the effect of this pressure? It pushes fluid out of the blood. So whereas the blood colloid osmotic pressure, it pushes fluid back into the blood, and capsular hydrostatic, it pushes fluid back into the capillaries. So filtration happens when outward pressure is greater than the inward pressure. So what is the function of this glomerular hydrostatic pressure? It allows the passage of water and solutes. So this is about the glomerular filtration rate. So next is filtration membrane. What do you mean by filtration membrane? This is a filter between blood and Bowman's capsule, which has three layers. So fenestrated endothelium, basement membrane and podocyte slit membrane. So fenestrated endothelium, it is the capillary wall within the tiny pores. So this allows the passage of water as well as solutes. Whereas basement membrane is a thick middle layer which blocks the proteins. And the third is podocyte filtration slits. So this is the cells with filtration slits. What is the function? This acts as a final filter that selects what passes. So you have to think of the filtration like pouring water through a coffee filter. So water and small particles pass through, coffee grounds like large proteins and cells stay behind. So this is a diagram which shows how blood enters the kidney, gets filtered, useful things are reabsorbed and waste is secreted and urine is finally excreted. So what is a blood flow? So blood flow first is the afferent arteriole. This brings blood into the glomerulus, which is a bundle of capillaries. So afferent arrives, which has a wider diameter than efferent arteriole, and it also has a high pressure, and also it pushes the filtration. So next is efferent arteriole. It carries the blood out of the glomerulus. Efferent means exit. So it's narrow because it maintains the pressure inside the glomerulus. So what are the filtration steps? The first step one is filtration. So this happens inside the glomerular capillaries into the Bowman's capsule. So water, ions, glucose, amino acids and waste molecules, they move out of the blood. So blood cells and large proteins stay in the blood. So next steps in the tube is after filtration, the filtrate enters the tubules where additional steps occur. So step 2 is reabsorption. So in this, the useful substances are taken back into the blood from the tubules into the peritubular capillaries. So examples: water, glucose, amino acids and sodium. So reabsorption is nothing but return to the blood. So next, the third step is secretion. So extra waste and chemicals are added from the blood into the tubules. The fourth step is excretion. So final fluid, it becomes the urine. It leaves the kidney through ureter and next to bladder and next to outside of the body. So what is the final formula? Excretion is filtration minus reabsorption plus secretion. So you can see here the glomerular capillaries, Bowman's capsule, peritubular capillaries. So this is the renal vein and efferent arteriole. So after blood is filtered in the glomerulus, the filtered blood or the filtered fluid, it enters the tubules of the nephron. So now the kidney must keep what the body needs and remove what the body must get rid of. So regulation of glomerular filtration rate. So the body controls how much filtrate is formed. So the first is auto-regulation. So kidney automatically adjusts the blood flow. It induces the myogenic response and the tubulo-glomerular feedback. It is responsible for the hormonal regulation, which is nothing but in RAAS, the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. It increases the blood pressure and increases the filtration. So ANP, which is also called as the atrial natriuretic peptide, it decreases the blood pressure and increases the urine production. So next is a neural regulation. It is controlled by the sympathetic nerves, which are the flight or fight substances. So this can reduce the kidney filtration temporarily to supply more blood to heart and muscles. So next is the tubular reabsorption. So what is tubular reabsorption? After filtration, useful substances are returned to the blood. So reabsorption, it happens in the proximal convoluted tubule, loop of Henle, distal convoluted tubule and collecting duct. So reabsorption is nothing but returning the good things back to the blood. So what is the first tubule? Proximal convoluted tubule or PCT. So this reabsorbs 65% of the filtrate. It reabsorbs 100% of glucose and amino acids. So reabsorbs major ions like sodium, chloride, bicarbonate and potassium. So it also reabsorbs most water by osmosis. So PCT is nothing but it's a place of complete taking back. So now what happens in different parts of the nephron? So nephron area, like in PCT, most water and nutrients are reabsorbed. Whereas in loop of Henle, it reabsorbs water and also the salt. And in DCT, it reabsorbs some ions and secretes the waste. Whereas collecting that area, the function is the final water control, which forms the urine. So here is a diagram in which you can see the filtration and tubular reabsorption. The filtration, it occurs in the glomerulus and the Bowman's capsule. So blood enters through the efferent arteriole and leaves through the efferent arteriole. So small molecules, these are filtered from blood into Bowman's capsule. So what gets filtered? Water, glucose, amino acids, salts and as well as urea and waste. So the next is tubular reabsorption. This means taking back useful substances from filtrate into the blood so they are not lost in the urine. So where reabsorption occurs, it's in the proximal convoluted tubule PCT, where reabsorbs all the glucose and amino acids. It reabsorbs most salts and most water and also reabsorbs 65% of the filtrate. In loop of Henle, this is a loop of Henle. So the descending limb, it reabsorbs the water, and ascending limb, it reabsorbs the salts like sodium, chloride and potassium. So this loop, it maintains the concentration of the urine. So next is distal convoluted tubule. It reabsorbs some salts like active transport. It is regulated by the hormones like aldosterone. And collecting duct. So what is collecting duct? It reabsorbs some water and which is controlled by ADH, nothing but the antidiuretic hormone. So collecting duct decides the final urine concentration. So next is the tubular secretion. So movement of the substances from the blood into the tubule to be removed. So it is secreted in the PCT, secreted in the DCT, and also excretion. Final urine contains urea, uric acid, creatinine, excess water and excess salts. So what happens in different parts of the nephron, especially the loop of the Henle, distal convoluted tubule, collecting duct and also the tubular secretion. So what is a loop of Henle? So loop of Henle, it is a U-shaped structure. So it has two limbs. One is descending limb, the other is ascending limb. So in descending limb, it is permeable to water only. So if water leaves the tubule, it gets reabsorbed into the blood. So the fluid inside becomes more concentrated. Whereas in ascending limb, it is impermeable to water. Means water cannot move. So actively reabsorbs the sodium, potassium and chlorine. So it makes the fluid diluted as the ions leave. So why loop of Henle is important? Because it creates a counter current mechanism essential for producing the concentrated urine. So you have to think of it like a two-way traffic system that enables a kidney to save water whenever needed. So the next is distal convoluted tubule. So this is a fine-tuning area for ion balance. So it reabsorbs sodium ions which depends upon the aldosterone. So this aldosterone, it increases the sodium reabsorption. So more sodium reabsorbed, more water follows and it increases the blood pressure. So it also reabsorbs the calcium ions which depends upon the PTH. So parathyroid hormone, it increases the calcium reabsorption and it is important in the calcium homeostasis. So this is how the distal DCT works. And then collecting duct. So this is a final decision maker for urine concentration. So what is ADH? It is an antidiuretic hormone. So this makes the collecting duct more permeable to the water. So more ADH, there will be more water reabsorbed and results in the concentrated urine. If there is a low ADH, for example, like diabetes insipidus, it results in the dilute urine. So aldosterone, it reabsorbs sodium and also secretes the potassium. So it helps to control the blood pressure and also to the potassium balance. So this is about the collecting duct. So next is tubular secretion. So this is not reabsorption but the opposite process. So what is that opposite process? So movement of substances from blood into the tubule to be secreted. So why tubular secretion is important? Because of the H plus ion secretion, K plus ion secretion and elimination of drugs and toxins. So H plus secretion, it maintains the acid-base balance. It helps to prevent the acidosis. Whereas potassium secretion, it excessive potassium is removed and it prevents the dangerous hyperkalemia. So the next is elimination of drugs and toxins. So some of the drugs and toxins are eliminated through this tubular secretion process like penicillin, creatinine, uric acid and ammonia. So secretion, it is a kidney's trash removal system. So here it is a diagram which shows nephron with processes. So the blue color is reabsorption and the pink color is tubular secretion. So the reabsorption is nothing but materials going back into the blood, whereas secretion, materials going into the tubule to be excreted. So what each segments does? So this is a PCT where the descending limb, through descending limb water goes out, through ascending limb sodium, potassium and chloride, they comes out. So DCT, sodium and calcium reabsorption, collecting that if it is about the water reabsorption via ADH and secretion is H plus NH4 plus ion, same drugs, and also about the creatinine. So next is about the urine formation. So the kidneys makes the urine in three main steps. So what are those? Filtration, reabsorption, and secretion. So filtration, this is done at the glomerulus. So you have to think like a filter or tea strainer. So blood enters the glomerulus under the pressure, and water plus small molecules like urea, ions, glucose, amino acids, they pass into the Bowman's capsule. So large molecules like proteins and cells, they stay in the blood. So in the diagram, the filtration is shown where blood enters the glomerulus, and also the filtrate moves into the Bowman's capsule. So the next step is reabsorption, which is done in the tubules. So this is a saving or recycling step of this urine formation. So there are the useful substances like glucose, amino acids, sodium ions and chloride ions, and also water. They are taken back into the blood. So this happens mainly in the PCT, which continues in the loop of Henry, DCT and collecting duct. So what is the purpose of the reabsorption in the tubules? So what does it do? It prevents the loss of important nutrients. It maintains the fluid as well as the electrolyte balance. So in the diagram, you can see the reabsorption where it arrows from the tubules, which is blue in color, which shows the reabsorption. So the third step is secretion. So secretion is also done in the tubules. So this is adding extra waste step. The kidney actively pushes H plus, K plus, drugs, toxins, creatinine from the blood to tubule. It helps with the acid-base balance, removal of medicines and removal of excess ions. So in the diagram, arrows from the blood, the tubule, which is the pink in color, it shows the secretion. So then what is the composition of the urine? So 95% of water and as well as 5% of solutes. So this 5% of solutes, they includes urea, uric acid, creatinine, and as well as ions like sodium ion, potassium ion, chloride ion, and also the bicarbonate ion. So normal urine output, it includes 1.2 1 to 1.5 liters per day. So this is how the formation of urine takes place. So the next is hormonal control of kidney function. So the kidney adjusts the water and salt levels using hormones. So one major system is the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. So which is also called as RAAS. It's the body's natural blood pressure raising system. So when is RAAS triggered? Due to low blood pressure, due to low sodium levels, and also the sympathetic nervous system activation, for example, during stress and blood loss. So how RAAS works? So what does this kidney do? It releases the renin whenever the BP or sodium is low. So renin converts angiotensin to angiotensin 1 and then angiotensin 1 through angiotensin 2 by in lungs. So angiotensin 2, it's a powerful vasoconstrictor, so which tightens the blood vessels. And angiotensin 2, it causes the blood vessels narrow, BP increases and also stimulates the release of the aldosterone form. So what is aldosterone? It increases the sodium reabsorption. So water follows sodium, which increases the blood volume. So potassium is secreted into the urine. So what is the final effect of the RAAS? The blood pressure increases, the blood volume increases, and also the sodium levels in the blood increases. So here is a diagram which shows you the filtration, reabsorption, secretion diagrams. So filtration, the diagram shows the filtration which is done at the glomerulus, which the filtrate enters the PCD. Whereas in reabsorption, the blue arrows indicate it. These are the useful substances moving back to the blood, happens in the PCT, loop of Henle, DCT, and collecting the duct. So what is antidiuretic hormone? So ADH is nothing but it is a hormone that saves water. So this hormone is released by the posterior pituitary. So what are the actions of the ADH? It increases the water reabsorption. It acts on the collecting ducts. It makes them more permeable to the water. and water moves back into the blood, which is less water in the urine. So next action is it concentrates the urine. So urine becomes darker and smaller in the amount, whereas it prevents the dehydration. It helps to maintain the water balance, which is important when you are thirsty, sweating, or dehydrated. And next is the counter current mechanism. So this is a kidney special system that helps to produce the concentrated urine. So counter current mechanism, it is divided into two components. So the first is counter current multiplier, which is a loop of Henle. So what does it do? It creates the osmotic gradient in the renal medulla. So it has higher concentration deeper in the medulla. So how does it works? So descending limb, in descending limb it is permeable to water and also the water leaves. Whereas ascending limb it is inferior to water which pumps out sodium and chloride. So this repeated process multiplies the concentration difference. So next is about the counter current exchanger of the vasa recta. So what is the function of counter current exchanger? It preserves the gradient caused by the or created by the loop of Henle. So vasa recta, it picks up the water and also the salts without washing away from the gradient. So why this counter current mechanism or counter current exchanger is important? Because if vasa recta didn't work, the medulla would lose its high salt concentration. So kidneys couldn't concentrate the urine. So this is how it is impossible to have for a counter current exchanger. So what is the final result? The kidney can make urine as concentrated as 1200 mol/ml. So especially in dehydration of the high ADH secretion. So this helps the body to save the water as well as to maintain the fluids. So at the right side, you can see a picture of counter current mechanism. So this diagram shows the large nephron, which is a thin and thick segments. So salt leaves the ascending limb, increases the medullary concentration. So water leaves the descending limb, so the tubule fluid becomes more concentrated. So what is the collecting duct in this diagram? So under ADH, more water leaves the collecting duct. So urine becomes highly concentrated. So next is the vasa recta loop. So blood flows in the hairpin loop, which helps to maintain the salt gradient at the multiple levels, like 300 to 600, 600 to 900, 900 to 1200. So the deeper the structure in the medulla, the more concentrated it becomes. So this is the physiology of the hormonal control kidney function. So next is the physiology of ureters. So what does the ureters do? They move urine from kidney as well as the bladder. How they work? They use the peristaltic waves like small muscle contractions. So this helps automatically, may not be gravity. So when does the peristaltis increase? When the ureter is more stretched, distended with the urine. So this means the faster movement of the urine to the bladder. And what is the clinical note of the uterus or uretus? ADH, this is why the kidney stones can cause collectively pain. The ureter contracts strongly to push the stone. So what you have learned from this slide, ADH, it helps the kidneys to save the water by making the collecting duct and also absorbing more water. So the counter current mechanism, nothing but it combines both of the loop of Henle and vasa recta. This creates and maintains a soft self gradient in the medulla. So this allows the kidney to produce a high concentrated urine. So the ureters, they use the peristaltis to push the urine from the kidneys to the bladder. So this is how the counter current mechanism work and the physiology of ureters do. So next is the physiology of urinary bladder. So the bladder works in two phases. The first phase is storage phase or the filling phase, and the second one is the voiding phase or micturition phase or urination. So what happens during the storage phase? So what is the goal? It stores the urine without leaking. So who controls it? Sympathetic nervous system dominates the fight or flight hormone. So this helps to keep the bladder relaxed and sphincters closed. So what happens whenever this happens? So the detractor muscles, they remains relaxed. Nothing but the bladder wall, it stays loose and stretchy. So always bladder to fill with the urine. So in the scenario of the internal sphincter contracted, this prevents the urine from leaking, and this sphincter is an involuntary one. So the next is external sphincter contracted. So this is under the voluntary control and helps you to hold the urine. So in the diagram, you can see the bladder fills, bladder neck is closed, and the external sphincter contracted. So the next is voiding phase or micturition phase or urination. So what is the goal of this voiding phase? It empties the urine from the bladder. So who can control this voiding phase? So parasympathetic nervous system, it dominates the rest and digest. So it stimulates the bladder contraction. So the detractor muscle contracts, they squeezes the bladder to push the urine out. So what is internal sphincter relaxes? It opens the pathway to the urethra. So external sphincter relaxes the voluntarily. So you consciously choose to urinate. The pelvic floor muscles also relaxes. So in the diagram, the bladder contracts, the bladder neck opens, and as well as the urine is expelled. So what is the phase 3? Termination of the voiding. Nothing but ending of the urination. So after urine is expelled, the external sphincter contracts again. So the pelvic floor tightens as well as the bladder neck closes. So it helps to stop urine flow properly. So a small amount of residual urine, it may return back. So in the diagram, the bladder neck is closed and the external sphincter is contracted. So this is about this diagram. It shows you the 3 phases, the filling and storage phase, voiding phase, and termination of the voiding. So next is physiology of urethra. What is physiology of urethra? Urethra is a tube that carries urine from the bladder to outside. So what is the function? It conducts the urine out of the body. It contains 2 sphincters, internal sphincter and as well as the external sphincter. So it also has 2 functions which carries the urine and also carries semen during ejaculation. So this is about the physiology of urethra. So this is for today's session. I hope this session has helped you. So in the next session, you will be learning about the male reproductive system. Thank you.